So here we are. We're live, boys.
Hey,
Broadcast is live.
broadcast is live. Here we go. We've got a couple of our regulars on. Yep,
guys.
time to act professional.
Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Knife Making Down Under podcast.
And with us this evening, we have Mert Tansu from Tansu Knives, Corin Urquhart from Artisan Supplies, and me, Kev, from Kev's Forge.
How are you guys?
Apparently we're late.
Good. Are we late? No, I clicked the button on time.
We schedule it for the time, and StreamYard, who's going through, brings it up. Oh, and here we go.
Okay, I just got to turn.
There we went.
Oh, here we go. Second time round.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, mate. Yep.
You hear us?
Okay, I can hear you. You just can't see me.
That's okay.
So,
That's okay.
Here we go. Thanks, guys, for having me on. Whatever reason, the browser won't support the cam in this at the moment. So, anyway.
Could be worse, mate.
People know what I look like.
Yeah.
You're a monster.
Big Tim
He's
Tam.
got the biggest guns in knife making in Australia next to mine.
You are a beast, my friend.
Oh, I feel like I'm shrinking and fading away, mate, lately.
Oh,
No,
Would you believe that my
Kev.
camera now... Yeah, my camera's just decided...
Well, we're off to a good technical start at Knife Making Down Under, so we're just going to cruise along. We've got about 53 people now watching us and ready to go. So welcome, everybody. And as we advertised tonight, we've got a special guest being Rob Herbert from R&N Blades. So while we're talking, it'd be a really good idea to cruise over to his site, check out what he does on his Instagram and on his Facebook. And you can ask any questions during the night, and we'll do our best to put them up for him.
absolutely. Flat out, mate. I've just actually walked in from the workshop. I just finished polishing a knife that's going out the door tomorrow and getting some sheaths ready for sewing.
Not that beautiful Dharma steel kitchen knife I saw?
No, that's actually going to hopefully be a bit of a pot stirrer, so to speak. We're trying to get a little bit more interest ramped up in the native food that we have, or our game food that we have here in Australia, through R&M Blades, I guess. And everyone knows I'm a pretty keen hunter, and I like to source a lot of my food from outdoors. So we're putting together a cookbook. So it's going to be a 25-page cookbook, and it's going to be just from submissions from people that follow us. And a knife very similar to that will be a giveaway prize to the best submission. So my daughters, I've got 3 daughters, and they're taking control of that. They're all adult kids. And my first daughter's going to Kev's back. My first daughter, Shay, she's going to do all the editorial with the grammatical stuff, because she's pretty king on that. And then once she's done all of that, then it's going to go to another daughter who does all the Photoshop stuff, and then to my last daughter who will look after all the publishing means and get it out there to the community. So happy days.
So when you say native food, are you talking wild edibles, or are you talking the hunting and fishing?
Both. So we're really trying to encourage also the Indigenous culture that's out there that's pretty strong, that people don't know about as well. So there's a whole lot of different bush foods, if you could say that in inverted commas, that people don't know about. And a lot of those bush foods go well with game meat. So that's the sort of stuff I'd like to open people's eyes to a little bit, and without getting too political in the environment that we're in now, where I wouldn't say that food is unreliable in Australia, but being able to, source your own food and put it on the table for people. And I mean, that's one reason why we all make knives, it gets a little bit more contact with actually what you do and why you do it. So if you make a chef's knife, to be able to be handy in the kitchen and use your chef's knife, there's a pretty good feeling that goes with that. And that's the same with producing food and putting it on the table, whether it's a dinner party or just for yourself, that's recognisable and enjoyable.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And in fact, Mert would probably talk to that just as well as anyone, being as that's how he got into knife making.
Well, actually, I was going to ask Robert a different question. Robert, this is Mert here, mate. Since this all COVID thing, you can gauge it a lot better since you're more in the hunting community. How the people's interest in hunting and all the bush foods changed since people realized our food resources are not like very rock solid, and all of a sudden we might lose the connection, and people might really have to hunt again. How did it change?
I guess to peel it back a little bit, my grandparents and my parents always had a backyard vegetable garden and a chooks or something similar, and that was a very Australian thing to do. And a lot of people knew where their food basically came from because they'd have to go out to the veggie garden and go and get veggies or tend to the garden or get eggs from the chooks or whatever else. And that was in suburbia, it was not just out in the country. And I think that people have sort of stretched away from that a little bit with the convenience that stores offer us as consumers. And you can see the same modelling going on with when people go and buy a $20 knife and then wonder why it doesn't perform, but it's a throwaway knife. But going back to the food sourcing, I think that a lot more people are prepared to chase that paddock to plate, so they get a better understanding of where their foods come from, what sort of connection they've had with that food from the gathering of it to putting it on the plate. And I think that more and more people are less trusting of what is actually in their commercially produced food that they buy at the store than what they can do personally when they know how they caught the fish or harvested the deer or pulled the carrot from the ground. They know the whole process behind it, a little bit more trusting. So more and more people are more interested in being able to sort of shore up all of those things so they know they can go and pick cauliflower, broccoli from the garden when it isn't in the shop. They can pick an apple from the tree. That they know how to prepare a fish or pull the backstraps out of a deer. And I think more and more people are returning to a couple of those old school sort of, I guess, die-hard ideas of being able to survive ourselves. It wasn't that long ago our grandparents went through the Great Depression, and you think that wasn't that long ago. Hiroshima was only 75 years ago. We're not all that old, So yeah.
Yeah, less reliant on listening to some pseudo TV chef star tell you that the food doesn't contain certain hormones from a certain grocery store when you buy their meat. That's what it's come down to. They need to pay people to convince you that the food doesn't have additives. Whereas, like you were just saying, Rob, that if you go and get it yourself, or you've got a friend that goes hunting and is kind enough to provide you with some of his bounty, then you're pretty much assured that that thing's been raised on organics up there in the mountains and has had as little processing as possible.
Absolutely. And I think that when people are looking at improving the health of their family, and it's not just health physically, mental health as well, there's a lot to be said about getting your hands dirty. It's a bit of an honest thing to do, but at the same time, you speak to a whole lot of people who garden and they feel so much better after having connection back to the earth. And I think that all of us as individuals really enjoy that to some extent, but all of us, it's deep down in us. It's like when people see a knife, why do they get really, fired up when they see a knife? They've got to own it because it's one of the oldest things that's been imprinted in our heads from, it's the first tool that we've had, and they look at it and say, I must have because part of survival. And I think that going along those same lines, it's looking at how do we go back to being able to supply our own food. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
I'm just saying, my neighbour across the road from me, I made him a knife, and he goes hunting. And funny thing is, he goes hunting, loves the hunt, but doesn't actually enjoy deer meat in particular. So I'm beneficial to that every time he comes home from a hunt, he comes and knocks on the door and hands me over, his share of the spoils. And man, I love the stuff. I just, probably sacrilege, I guess, but I just made some of the most beautiful jerky out of the last lot of deer meat that he gave me. My wife and I were just away for a couple of days time out, refresh the headspace, and sitting down, just eating that jerky that you knew literally was hunted 3 days before I made it. And it's deer meat in particular, with the small amount of fat that's in it, especially on those back straps. Yeah, it's absolutely bloody perfect. Hard to beat it.
Look, I think that getting people excited about their own food and gathering their own food is only a small part of what we can do. You think about how people look at a really well-balanced knife that they can use in the kitchen. They are already emotive about using that knife. They see themselves in the kitchen cutting whatever it is. And when they can cut an onion without crushing the cells in the onion, which is what causes your eyes to bleed over the sink, they're already, it's a romantic sort of idea, but it's also an absolutely achievable idea, to be able to do that. So, all power to being a bit of a home chef and being able to supply not yourself, but all your friends, because there's a lot of families that aren't doing it so well at the moment as well. And if I can do 20 kilos of snags and I can do, 15 kilos of mince and I can do all that sort of stuff for people and I can feed families that haven't got money at the moment, it's a good thing all around.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Huge. And so you're doing most of your hunting these days with the bow or with the rifle?
I'm doing a lot with the rifle at the moment just because of time. We've got so much work on in the workshop, we've got about 20,000 followers just over between Facebook and Instagram. Got a deal in Germany, in New Zealand, in America, and obviously in Australia as well, supplying the knives here with military contracts and other law enforcement contracts as well to fill. We're quite busy, and it's just my wife and I doing it. So when I get half an hour to go out and grab a deer, I would love to spend a couple of days with my bow back out in the bush, but I just got to zip out, go and grab one, and get back.
It's just a quick trip to the supermarket instead of the long prolonged walk around the mall sort of thing.
Yeah,
is that a drive-through?
It's certainly part of, it's a big motivator for me as well when I'm seeing people out there using the knives that I've made to help them get a really good, clean harvest. So when someone cuts meat, so just to be talking about that, if someone's using a blunt knife and they put 100 cuts in the meat, there's 100 opportunities for the meat to spoil, so bacteria and stuff can jump in on every one of those meat cuts. But if you've got a sharp knife that brings the harvest home without that sort of high spoilage factor, to me that makes it, I'll make knives all day for people that want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's your passion. Yeah.
I think it's that good thing as well, mate, that, we're all in the same boat, really, I guess, when we're trying to make our gear to the best level that we can and get it out there. And, we all follow each other on the social media side, but you have that connection. Every time I see one of your posts that you pop up and someone's, got one of your ketas or something like that on there, I get that little buzz out of it myself. Like for you, it's great to see, like I said, that one of your mates is out there doing something great, and people are using the knives. I guess in terms of a knife making sense in Australia, especially for me, that's what counts. I want to see more and more of the guys that I know getting their gear out there and then getting those photos back from the users and actually seeing your stuff in work. It's good to see.
Yeah. I've been eyeing off one of them heliums for a while, so. Yeah, you may get an order soon. They're a nice little design, very, very practical. Guys, if you haven't checked out his work, go and follow him, as I say, on Instagram. And it's a complete package with Herby. You get the whole story. He runs you through as he's working, and you see the different things that he's doing and different machinery and what's happening. So it's a really good channel on Instagram to follow.
Actually, Robert, I was going to ask you, for those who don't know, I know you have a big following on Instagram and Facebook. So how did you get, for those who don't know, how did you get into knives and knife making?
Yeah, okay, great question, mate. I grew up in the country, and, from the...
Whereabouts were you? Like in the country in Victoria?
Up in New South Wales on the outskirts of Windsor. So... you guys up in New South Wales would know where that is. So
I know where you went to school, mate.
you do.
I went there too.
You know, when I grew up, we started working in the morning at about 10 years old. The neighbour had a farm, and we started working about 4:30 in the morning, and worked through until 6:30, and then ran back home through the scrub, and had a breakfast and shower, and went to school and did all that again in the afternoon. So for me, when I was growing up, having a knife was more than just something that I aspired to do. I needed a knife as part of my daily jobs to be able to work around the farm. And my grandfather was a really big instigator in keeping your blade sharp, and taught my big brother and I how to set traps. So we had a trap line we had to clear on the way home from working. We'd grab rabbits and whatever else out of it, and we'd have to have a sharp knife to be able to process the rabbits. And we'd put the rabbits in the sink for mum, and they would be de-haired and gutted, and mum would prep them for dinner that night. So I guess I just really admired how my grandfather's knife was, no matter what he rubbed it on, how he did it, was always shaving sharp. So it really kicked me off into that wanting to sharpen. So I sharpened every knife in mum's kitchen about 12 times, in one day, just with this shitty old stone. And I read a lot of the books from back when, the boys' annuals and those sort of books, with Grizzly Adams and all of those frontiers sort of stories. And they always had a really good Bowie knife. So when I was allowed, I saved up for this knife. There was a Bowie knife that was in there when they used to sell knives and toy shop. It was actually in Dural, in near Castle Hill. There was a toy shop there, and I could buy this Bowie knife for $13, and it took me more than a month of wages at the farm, because I only got paid $6 a week for 7 days work, to save up for this Bowie knife.
Call the fair work. You don't have to call the fair work on that one, man. It was just unreal, this knife that I wanted. It had a fake bone handle, that sort of stuff. But in my head, it was my bear killing knife. It was my adventure knife. Well, the day I had enough money, I jumped off the school bus and walked into the Dural mall.
They were the days when you could jump off the school bus and buy a knife.
Yep, and I walked in, and he had sold the last one.
Oh.
I felt like the world had actually stopped spinning on the axis. I was just so devoed, and I walked out of there. I think I tripped over my lip 3 or 4 times. And I went back home, and I was so upset. Anyway, so after I got over that, I made my first knife out of a fence post shovel that Dad had. That was probably perfectly operational until I took to it with a hammer and a grinder and pulled it apart and cut this rough looking. I knew nothing about making knives, and I probably can still say I don't. But I pulled this knife of this shovel apart and made a bush knife out of it, and it was terrible. So I decided I needed a piece of flat steel, and where would I get this flat steel from? And I eyed off the power board in Dad's shed, because it had a big flat piece of steel in it. And I thought, that's what I want. And after months and months of me just ramping myself up, because I knew Dad would be pretty cross, I pulled the flat piece of steel, which was the actual internal cover to the board on the power board, and pulled it out and cut it up, and I cut out this bloody awesome knife, and I've still got it somewhere. But Dad wasn't happy. He didn't really swear a lot, Dad, but I heard him swear when he saw his power board to the workshop pulled apart.
Yeah, but you got to do these things.
You little bastard was. But we grew up running around doing all that sort of stuff, and we'd go down to the creek and we'd spear silver eels and catch yabbies and just have a real bush kid's life. It was fantastic. And once again, having a knife to do all that stuff was part of your kit. so that sparked my initial interest in knives and looking at them and that sort of stuff. And then going through high school, I went and did metal class and all those things in the metal class. And I wanted to make a knife there. And the metal teacher did a little bit of forging and showed me how to heat and temper steel and that sort of stuff to a very, very, very basic level. And I made a rough little knife at school and did all that sort of stuff. And then progressed through that and went and joined the army and saw how good a knife could be in the army and how effective it was. And during that, I'm sort of fast forwarding at times 11. During that time, I went to an army camp, if you want to call it that, and met Adam Parker.
Yeah.
And Adam Parker from Ballarat, from Parker Knives. He had this knife that he'd made some other dude and was making some knives with some guys that were going overseas and whatever else. And I was pretty impressed. And anyway, I didn't actually hook up with him too much then, but I actually turned a light bulb in my head that there's a world out there of people that make knives in Australia. Like, this is pretty cool. So long story short, I got out of the army years later, and I was shooting a lot of kangaroos for a bloke, a couple of hundred a week, and I needed a much better knife than what I had to hold an edge. I thought, oh bloody, look up that bloke Adam Parker. So I looked him up, and he said, "Yeah, I can make you a knife. It's going to cost $230 or whatever." And I nearly fell over. I was like, "How much?" And it was made out of ATS 34 and brass guard and all that sort of stuff. And so we had a bit more of a conversation. And he said, "Well, we haven't caught up for ages and ages. How about you come down to Ballarat and spend the weekend at my place, and together we'll go through how to make a knife and whatever else." And so I guess, $230,000 later, here I am today.
It's a rabbit hole.
So, you wish that was an exaggeration, mate, but it's bloody not.
It's not. So, so that's kind of how I first started getting into knives and understanding that they were more than just a flashy tool. And
all right. Take us back a little bit in time, mate, because we did, like I said, about 11 times fast forward there. Take us back to your first workshop. Like, what was in your first workshop when you first started getting into, making them as a hobby?
So when I got a little bit serious, I'd been to 3 or 4 guild shows as a non-guild member. Just went to the guild shows and had a look down there, and I'd in that whole time I'd bought Wayne Goddard's $50 knife shop or whatever it was called.
Yeah,
and I'd tried to build a grinder, but if WorkSafe had seen what I'd built, they'd certainly would shut me down for life. And when the belt ran off it and took off across the floor like it had its own soul, it didn't even collapse. It still stayed round and went whizzing past me at about 4,500 surface feet a second. I thought, I need to buy something that's made by someone else. So I bought an Abbott and Ashley, and at just a bigger, I think it was an 8-inch single horse grinder.
Is that the multi-tool or just the?
Yeah, I just bought it first originally and tried to grind just on the grind
Stones.
wheels, and that wasn't very successful at all. It wasn't. I thought that I could just stand in front of it and go, yabba dabba do, and this knife would turn out, but it just turned out horrible. So then at that point in time, we didn't actually have anything that we had now in Australia. And as far as, I think that 84 Engineering did one of the first conversions of a bench grinder into something you could use, similar to being so I then put the multi-tool thing on mine. This is prior to 84 Engineering stuff. I put the multi-tool on mine. It was running way too fast, but damn, I made some knives on it. I learnt to use the tool that I had.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll
tell you, just there about multi-tools. It was oh fuck, what's his name? Up in Queensland, wild guy invented the Filicetti, Steve Filicetti.
Yep.
Steve Filicetti said to me, "Nothing wrong with the multi-tool. They're the original variable speed grinder." I said, "What do you mean they're variable speed?" He said, "The harder you push, the slower they go."
That's no lie. Yeah, so I think that was my very first knife making grinder, if you want to call it that. And I actually took my knives that I made off that down to the knife show and had Peter Dorelso look at them, and he wanted to know how I could hollow grind them so thin without burning through the material. I thought he was actually giving me a compliment, but now that I look at it, I think, wow. But I sat with Pete at that show, and he spent about an hour and a half with me, as I'm sure that he has with thousands of people that have started knife making. And I've still got the brown bag that he sat down and showed me some design concepts, which I've carried through my work today in relation to pin placement and, lines and all that sort of stuff, things to look for and look at and whatever else. And that sort of really encouraged me to want to come to more of these guild shows and learn more about it. So that was my first tool, and I just used a normal battery drill. I didn't have I didn't in any way have any sort of like drill press or anything like that. And yeah, just went to the shows and started to learn more about what was out there. And then there was a German guy that was out at the other side of Ballarat there. I'm trying to think of his name. I don't think he's passed away.
Wangerman?
Wangerman. And I bought a Hardy Wangerman?
Hardy Wangerman, yeah, that's it.
I went out to see Hardy, and I bought a Hardy Wangerman grinder. And man, for me, that thing was like, a Rolls Royce. That was unreal compared to grinding on the Abbott and Ashley thing. And I made a few knives on that, and some of them were disasters, and some of them were okay. And I think I just got to learn how to make knives on shitty equipment really before, because there wasn't really any more. Hardy was one of the only guys making grinders of any standard back then. So I guess in a way I wasn't spoiled. I had to learn how to make knives and how to grind and how to adjust pressure and all those sort of bits and pieces to be able to, make a successful knife. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, golden. I remember I think it was your first show. It was my first show, 2012 guild show.
Yeah, yep.
You sold out lunchtime on the first day or something, pretty early on in the piece, I think, on that. That was back at the Ibis.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, I became the Treasurer Secretary for the Guild for quite a number of years. And unfortunately for me, with the work that I had too much going on, and it was the early stages unbeknownst to me of PTSD, and I just wasn't able to handle the workload as well as I wanted to. And Facebook was hardly a thing, and it was really difficult organising, everything to do with the guild and all those sort of bits and pieces. But certainly, gave my quart of blood for the guild and still support it today.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. You're the one who first set up the PayPal and things, which we can't use anymore. But it was still, you did a lot of hard yards back in time to get things moving. So yeah, I certainly remember that. I was only new to the scene at the time. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we organised one of you, or we spoke about you getting your first bulk buy done. What did we think about it?
The one, yeah. You were on the first bulk buy for steel. You were on probably the second one for grinders. You got your first Wilmot.
Yep.
And you're the guy that said, "Did you know there's this product called Rhino Wet? It's everyone's secret weapon. That's how they're getting their knives done so quick." And then I did the Rhino bulk buy out of that. I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah, just those were fun times. And as you say, there was not much going on back then, and it was like the world was kind of our our oyster in terms of what we could bring in, because there wasn't anything. So, yeah, and then you got the Tag 101, which you've had for years, and you're still mate with Chris Williams, and you've spent time in his shop as well, eh? So you guys have a relationship that goes back a ways as well, yeah?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think that knife making itself, for anyone that wants to get into it, really opens up doors and relationships with people that you would never think possible. So it's more than just making knives.
Oh, absolutely. The mateship's incredible. There's very few people in our industry that I don't actually like as people, and it's not many places where I go in life where I find that. You know what I mean? It seems to me that if you've got the DNA to make knives, you sort of set you into a good spot straight away as being like just kin, really. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Have a look at it when we all meet up over in America when you're not hiding under a table with a headache.
We're not there. We're not there like you. We're not there for business. We're just there for a good time.
But it's just unreal. No one doesn't support each other. It's just unreal. It's really
you got to look at the support, mate. Especially when that camaraderie. When another bloke gets you out of a tight situation by travelling halfway across the world and bringing an extra 4 packets of Tim Tams over for your mates.
Mate, the amount of the amount of traction I got from those Tim Tams, mate, much appreciated. For people who haven't been to Blade, it's a absolutely huge event, and when you see another Aussie there, not just a patron but a mate, it's a bloody Christmas morning moment. It really is. It's good to see.
Oh, it's surreal. It really is surreal, I reckon.
It's,
and hopefully, we'll get the travel back in and around the world, or the global travel going again before too long, so we can actually, I know there are a lot more Aussies that were planning to be going over to Blade Show this year that, unfortunately, with everything that occurred, never got over there. So I think in terms of that traction, and that's the stories that we talk about continually. I know a lot of people get a bit bored with them, but you got to get amongst it. I think once you get over there and you're a part of it, then you'll understand why we have such fond feelings about the whole thing. And like you were saying before, Rob, just the friends that you meet and in that knife making community, we've been over there, and apart from say someone like yourself, you got that bit of a legend status here in Australia. But I remember going past a couple of tables in the US and looking down at these knives and going, man, they ringing bells, these knives. And then you lean over and you have a look at the name of the person on the table or on their lapel or something, and you realize it's like knife making royalty, and there you are in front of them, and they're prepared to just have a chat, and you're just another person. You're just blokes, and you have that connection when you tell them you're a maker. It's hard to beat.
Look, without name dropping, because it's not what I'm meaning to do, I've been mates with a bloke called Ken Onion for quite a while, and we talk, I guess, on more like an uncle for me type of level. And it really sort of opened my eyes up to, for me, he's always been Ken, and I was doing a grinding demonstration at Blade, and there was a fair few people standing around having a bit of a look and that sort of stuff, because it's amazing at these knife shows the amount of people that appreciate the art form, but they might talk it up, but they can't actually just step up in front of a grinder and grind, because they need so many different vices to be able to grind. Anyway, Ken's in his little, because he's got a really bad back. He's had 20-something operations on his back, and he's in a little sort of like a golf carty thing, and he rocks up, and he's got about 30 people following him, which I thought was really weird. And he walked over to me, and he gave me a hug and goes, "What's going on, man?" I said, "I'm busy, Ken. Take a seat. I'll talk to you in a minute." And then you could have heard the crowd went, and I was like, huh? Oh, yeah, okay. So Ken just laughed. He thinks it's funny. I tell him when I see his knives, "You going to finish that knife yet, Ken, or what? Like you haven't finished grinding them?" You know? So,
I got a few Ken Onion design Kershaws. They're quite nice. Very nice, actually. Yeah.
he's a
Yeah,
bloody
I got
gentleman.
one of those. I got one of those off you, and it was actually funny today, Rob, because of seeing the time that you spent with him a couple of years ago when you went over. I think it was particularly when you were looking at your folder development or just in your general style development. And I got to be honest with you, I didn't know who Ken Onion was, and it sounds funny, you're a knife maker, and everyone just expects you to know who all these people are, and it's like there's so many names to know and so many people to know in the industry. So it was after you were talking about it that I went and had a look at his stuff, and I was like, oh man, these are the bee's knees. These are bloody awesome. And then your connection, and then I got this knife off Corin that he picked up over in the US, and Ken Onion's name on there, and I just had that little, this is me mate, Herby's mate. You automatically have that connection, and it's a funny thing.
Oh mate, when you step outside of the comfort zone of Australia, and go and really, get your knives looked at by people like Bill Harsey, Ken Onion, those sort of guys that are like Elvis of the knife making world, and they give you feedback on how your knife is or whatever. I think one of my biggest, I try to stay pretty humble is one thing I try and do, because I think that if you drink your own bath water, you'll fall over pretty quick. But Bill Harsey came up to me at the last Blade show and he said, I want to shake your hand, Rob. I said, oh, okay, why? Why's that? And he said, oh, that little helium that you're making? And I said, yeah. He said, how Kafaru wanted to have a small knife made and they picked your helium? I said, yeah. He said, well, they picked your helium over my design. Well done. And I thought,
right.
Nice.
Well, thanks, Uncle Bill. But I don't. You certainly don't let your ears get too big from that. It's just what it is. But I've fallen on my feet there, I guess, a little bit, and being able to design knives for Kafaru and being a designer and maker, it's certainly been a good feather in my cap, anyway.
Yeah, for sure. It's like I said, in that environment, especially staying on that Blade Show stuff. It's funny, like I said, when you go over there and you walk. For us, you go in as an Aussie. I went across there, I guess, as an absolute unknown when I went across, and I was meeting people through people, and I was getting names, and I'd have to go and sign onto the Wi-Fi and Google who these people were. So I had no idea. And I was meeting these people and shaking their hands and having a chat and buying them a drink, or they were buying me a drink, whichever way it worked out at the time. And then you walk away, like I literally would walk out into the pit and Google and go, who's this fella? And then find out that it's, master smith that's been around, top of the game for 35 years. And you sort of go, bloody hell. Oh, he's just another bloke, really, when you're just down the bar having a drink, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Corin, can you pull up the question from Matt Snape? Matt Snape had actually a really nice question about saying, since we've been talking about knife design and all that, Robert, Matt Snape is asking, how did you end up getting the contacts for the designing knife for the Defense Force? Yes, that one.
Yep. I think when you're trusted by different groups, it's easy. Let's just say that. Yeah. It's easier.
Is that what you're saying?
When you've been involved, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
the background respect.
Yeah.
Look, I understand that.
I think sorry, Matt, that's about as much as I can say on that. But I think too, the one thing about going overseas and getting outside of the guild show, which a lot of people have gone to, which has got, what would they have, 25 makers at the show? And you think where you're at as a maker amongst that level, then you go overseas and you sometimes expect them to be a lot better. But then when you look at, Mertz knives, Barry Gardner's knives, in their high performance end of knives, you actually realise that Australia is absolutely kicking ass. Like we have got some top end makers over here that would blow a lot of the other guys, whether they're JSs or MSs or whatever else, out of the water.
Just like little Humble Rumble getting the Keesler Award last year or last Blade Show.
Yeah.
Look, what's the population of Australia? 20 something million. I think per capita we have more talented makers than anywhere in the world. I will say that.
Yep. And I think you don't need to look far to find good makers in what they do. Where I think if you totally think that I need to go somewhere else, always looking outside of the boundaries, sometimes it's right in your backyard, And the people that inspire me the most are the guys that are making knives with files without any machinery, that they're having a crack at their first couple of knives and they're doing it over and over and over again because they just love making knives, They send me their work.
Inspirational. I get that, but fuck it, I'm not doing that.
No.
I'm not going to do it.
That's why we have grinders and things. But those guys, for me, that don't have the money or just want to learn from the basics up, for me, they're the guys that, it depends on why you make knives, but they're the guys that really spin my wheels, it's pretty cool, I think.
Rob, with Corin, you have all the tools in your shed. You have all the tools, all the accessories, and you get to manage to make one freaking knife a year. I don't want to imagine you trying to do a knife with the files. It'll be like one knife in every other year or something.
Luc Charles Daigle says, "Can you pop up a photo of your military knife for us to admire, mate? You might like to pop that up on your Facebook after this and show people what you're making if you can do so."
Yep, for the Sierra 13, it's called. So
Sierra 13, guys, look that one up.
Yeah, pop onto Herby's Instagram, guys, and scroll down and have a look because there's plenty of photos up there of the stuff that he makes. At the moment, he hasn't got access to his camera, so we can't see his face on the broadcast tonight. And Corin before was scrolling through Herby's Instagram up on the main screen, showing a lot of his work on there. I guess one of the things, Herbie, was one of the things I've noticed with your, I guess, the style of direction that you make, which I'm always pleased to see, is that you seem to have that the production sort of kit, which is now becoming quite familiar, the Kifferoo stuff. But you also, I'm a bit of a fan of the old school knife making style, and the last lot of rounded knives that you just made with your brass guards, timber handles, and butt caps on them. That's a style that I like. So I think it's really nice to see that. You're saying before that you're quite busy, which I think is a very dramatic understatement. But it's nice to see that you've still got time to come back to, I guess, where the roots of where the knife making came from with you as well.
Yeah, Tar, I think that for advice for people, I first garnered Sean McIntyre's help in the mental space of what does it take to become a full-time knife maker. And that was going back years and years ago. So for me, I'd like to pass on, I guess, my experience or message to people that want to be a full-time knife maker. It's extremely expensive. It's a learning curve that you need to undertake every day, because every day is when someone's going to send you a message about a knife that isn't any good in their eyes, a design fault, could have you done this a little bit better, and all those sort of things that you need to take on professionally and not personally. So when someone says your kitchen knife, I drag my knuckles on the bench every time I use it, if you took it personally and got shitty, you'll only ever make kitchen knives that drag knuckles. So it's hard to step outside of your own ego at times when you think you've designed the best knife ever, and you want to produce that knife and get it out there to 100 people, but in fact, the knife itself is junk. So to be told that personally can really affect people, and then it'll make you crawl back under the rock and just go back to your old job. But to be able to take that advice professionally will certainly move you down the road. At the same time, it's one thing to make a knife on a weekend and to have 10 or 15, maybe 20, 50, 100 friends that all like what you make. And it's another thing to go full time when you need to put money on the table to be able to buy all of your consumables in huge bulk, because you use them in huge bulk, and you need to be able to make money. And it's not that you're making wage, you're making money, because Corin knows exactly the issues in relation to importing large amounts of, whether it's steel or abrasives or whatever it is. As a full-time maker, there's no point having 3 belts of every grit on the wall, because that's all you can afford. You need to buy your belts in, every grit in 20s or 40s in every grit, and put that order in every month. So
this is a segue, I think, for our word from our sponsor, Kev.
Yeah. Well, we should have a little input.
Here he's coming in. I'll just
hang tight. Word from the sponsor.
Word from the sponsor.
Also, you might want to tell us about the new line of the belts.
Knife maker.
With a lot to learn. It's Timmy. He's a handful of trouble at every
Timmy,
turn.
what's going on?
Timmy leaves the
Gameco Artisan Supplies.
and goes up into the trying to be cool, he's number 1. He joins all his friends
Knife Making Down Under podcast.
and he's always having such a lot of fun. Timmy, it's Timmy.
So there you go. That's our new Timmy Time intro that Timmy has edited and cut up himself from various bits of Timmy legend, getting drunk at knife camp and whatever else. He's just got the link and he's signing in now because I forgot to give it to him earlier because we're so professional. Here he is.
There's Timmy.
Right. Timmy.
There's your milk.
Timmy, what's happening?
Oh, there's the milk.
Timmy with the milk.
He's got his milk.
How you going tonight, Tim?
I'm good. How are you all?
We're all going.
I'm sure after seeing that little video.
Yeah, it's funny that it's a good thing that the microphones get muted when that plays, because I was having a good old laugh.
I'm good. Much better than the night before.
Very good, very good. Tim, you're on here now to give us a quick heads up on the latest activities at Gameco Artisan Supplies. What can people look for, mate?
Well, we have a new bulk buy on some belts, so that's pretty exciting. They're called the Reaper belts. They're a Klingspool belt. I really like them. I think they're probably my favorite belt. They're a lot sharper than anything else that I've ever used. Better than the Blaze in my opinion. They're better for Cole, who also works with me. So we've got a whole range of them.
So the thing about these belts, if I can jump in on Timmy there, is that about 3 years ago we got onto them, but they're expensive. And you can buy them in the States and everywhere, but they're expensive. And so we started using them. And then Tharwa Valley Forge got onto them. I think they were the first major customer that started buying them in huge quantities, because even though they're expensive, they were lasting much longer. And then actually just a whole bunch of people have been getting onto them. Bruce Barnett's now onto them. He reckons they're awesome. I don't think he uses anything else anymore in those grits. All the guys at Tharwa, obviously, Cole, Timmy, and Sean McIntyre reckons best belts he's ever used, particularly in the 120 grit. So coming from Sean, who's used more belts than anyone else, that's pretty big statement. So we went to Klingspor, and I said, if we buy a lot of belts, can you do a better price and we can get this sort of out there? And they basically said, yeah, but you'll have to buy a lot. I said, that's fine, we'll buy a lot. And we gave them we've given them a very large order. And the guys have got the branding happening, which is, as Timmy said, it's Reaper. So you should be able to see that. Gameco Artisan Supplies, Reaper ceramic belts. And, of course, they do a J-Flex in this ceramic as well, and the titanium. Timmy, what's the good thing about the titanium one?
The titanium one has a cooling top coat. So it's specifically designed to keep the belt cooler. So it works really well on titanium and stainless steels because it doesn't heat up as much, and it's really good against those really wear-resistant materials.
So we started bringing those in originally to feed the needs of one Mr. Dominic Binkert, who was grinding huge, massive blocks of titanium to make his big pry bars. And, he loved them. So they've been pretty popular with him. And then, again, they're more expensive. And then they've got a J-Flex one, which we're calling the Flexing Reaper. See that?
Yeah. Is that Herbie's guns on there?
That's Herbie's guns on the Grim Reaper.
Too small for Herbie's.
You can't see it, Herbie. Sorry, you'll have to go back and watch the live feed.
Yeah.
And so, because they're the Flexing Reaper, and I want people to give me their feedback tonight, because we've got the Flexing Reaper, which is the flexible, the J-Flex, I reckon the stiff one should be the Stiffy Reaper, but they won't do it.
The idea has been vetoed. I'm saying no.
Yeah.
I'm saying yes.
Let's not go there, because we've seen what happens when Artisan Supplies post up a meme with an apparent naked lady. The internet goes into a flurry, and paint shop skills come into play.
The short of all this is we have ordered tens of thousands of belts. We've got a price that nobody in the world can probably get near. We're 20% cheaper on belt for belt than you'll buy in America on this bulk buy, which you'll find on the bulk buy group. They are the genuine German Klingspor belts. I think we're even cheaper now than Blaze, Tim, with the amount we bought.
Yep.
And guys, they're not like some rebranded Chinese thing. They're genuine German Klingspor belts. We're just giving them a little bit of branding and a bit of fun because that's what we're into. But
to give a little taster of the price, the 72-inch 40 grit in the Red Reaper,
which is the most expensive one,
is the most expensive one, is $10 per belt.
Yep. Yeah, and if you try and buy, like if I was looking today, the price that we're selling for on one-off in Australian dollars is the same dollar value. So it's actually $7.05 plus GST. It's the same dollar value that you can buy from a major American supplier in lots of 50 in US dollars. So that makes us about 30% cheaper than America.
Wow.
So it's a one-off special buy. We've only got these prices for this order. So, as Herbie was saying, if you want to jump on and give it a go and give them some love, I reckon this is going to be the next big thing. You can buy these belts if you're listening from America. Reaper belts are available from Pops Knife Supplies and True Grit and others over there, so you can give those guys some love and support. But absolutely awesome belts. Anyway, anything else?
Put my $5,000 order.
We can do whatever you want, but you just got to let Timmy know what you need. Let Timmy know what you need. And as a matter of fact, Herbie, I'll get Timmy to get you some samples. Yes, Merv.
Speaking of the bulk buy, I just want to show this, and thanks for the fast shipping, Timmy. I got balls of steel, 52-100 ball bearing steel. Fast shipping, thanks, buddy.
That's for you, mate.
No, that's all right. We're actually catching up. For those of you that have been suffering for our massive wait times during COVID, we pushed out to 14 days on some orders have gone longer than that. But we're back on top of it. We've got a whole new crew in the warehouse, and they're just smashing it. We're working shifts, and we're really just getting on top of it. So thanks for your patience through that period. It's been Tim will tell you, I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like it, Tim. It's
absolutely,
it's phenomenal. The amount of support we got through that whole time. What was that, Tim?
I'm working 50 hours a week, so you know I'm trying
Oh my
hard,
God.
guys. I'm trying real hard.
Oh my
50
god!
hours a week. You poor thing.
Wow.
These guys
Well,
run their own businesses. You're not going to get any sympathy here, Tim.
Without
I
pumping
don't
the
care
size up,
about them.
Corin, the thing that a lot of people now don't have the advantage of is being able to have lived back when you guys weren't supplying anything. So when you wanted something, it was a month's wait because you had to order it, had to wait for it to clear customs in the States, come over, then you pay some stupid, ridiculous tax on what came in. Then it had to get shipped to you, and you were waiting on the same amount of time, a month on materials or whatever else. So support if you're listening, and it's not just because I'm, any discount off Corin or anything like that. Just support what's here in Australia. If you can, and it all goes round in a big circle. So,
Yeah, look, it's no excuse. We have had this has been a total shift for the business. We went from a wholesaler. You remember that you guys actually were all there, Kev and Herby particularly, and Mert not long after. We were just a little gas equipment supplier, wholesaler, exactly. And now, probably in terms of the number of orders, probably 90% of the stuff leaving my New South Wales branch is to make a knife. You wouldn't think that could happen, but we lived through it. So
you're absolutely killing the gas side of business, I'd say.
Well, we do pretty good in gas, but that's it's just different,
Yep.
So we have different people, we have a different understanding, a different mentality. The knife making customers, I don't want to be rude, but there's a different mentality in terms of the expectation from the customer as well. So it is just different. You're not sending a stock order for most of these guys. You're sending something that they ordered on a Wednesday that they want for the weekend. And it's like we do our best, but you're going to let people down. It's just collateral damage, but we do our best.
You guys do a good job, and that you're supporting the community. You're given the opportunities to get stuff in cheaper than anyone can ask for. Most other avenues, and like Herbie was saying, without the hassles, without the personal hassles of I remember back, you guys had basic sort of stuff, and I remember going onto the Jant's website and drooling over stuff, and then sending out the emails. Wait because of the time delay. You'd probably get back a day and a half later. You get a response because of the volume they're dealing with. Then you go back to Jant's, and you finally get your order through after about a week and a half of fluffing around, and then you've paid for it. Sometimes you have to ring up and give your credit card details. Get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to ring a lovely lady over at Jant's there and give you credit card details. And then, like I said, wait 8 weeks to 12 weeks to 16 weeks for the stuff to get into customs.
And then find out that when you did the conversion from 1/8 to 3 mil, it didn't work. And all your shit's the wrong size.
Oh, I clearly remember. I had ordered a steel from US once, PM stainless, like powder metallurgy stainless, that you want to really do stock removal, and I realized I miscalculated the inches and all that stuff, and the thing that I want to get for stock removal ended up being 6 mil thick. So I had to learn how to forge PM stainless on power hammer real quick.
There's some big news in terms of steel. We've got some bulk buys on the water, which everyone knows the 1084 and 15 and 20. That'll be here. Timmy, when's that coming in? This is your section, not mine.
That's coming in hopefully this month, and we should be getting web pages up for that and sending orders out by the end of this month.
So that's
we've also got a bunch of stainless coming.
Yeah, so what have we got stainless wise?
So we've got a whole shipment of Nitro V coming in one of our Paragon containers. Also got some N690 coming. What else have we got? Got some CPM 154.
M390 or M360 or whatever that shit is, the bowler one, LMAX. Yes. And that one you wanted, Mert. I bought a heap of the one you wanted. What's it called? The
LMAX?
No, CP something or other.
CPM 154.
No, we got that as well. We got that from the the States. We were talking to a guy that actually Rob knows. What's the one that you wanted, Mert? And it gets real hard, and it's like
26C3.
that one. We got a batch of that coming. Big one.
Nice.
Actually, Cole's just correcting us in here. It's delayed to the end of the month. It was scheduled to August. Polar 26C3. So he knew what I was talking about. Anyway, guys. Anyway, that's enough. That's enough word from our sponsor. Stuff happening. And
See you guys.
thanks,
We've got
Timmy.
more important
It was
guests than
really
you,
nice.
Tim. Bugger off.
I'll play the. I don't have an outro for you, Timmy. You've got to make yourself an outro.
Yes.
I will.
man.
I'll make one.
Go on, make an outro.
I'll give him another Timmy time because damn it, he went to a lot of effort.
Knife maker.
With a lot to learn. Timmy. He's a handful of trouble at every
Timmy,
turn.
what's going on?
Timmy lives on
Gameco Artisan Supplies.
and goes up into the trying to be cool, he's number one. He joins all his friends.
All right, that'll do. I've had enough. But
Get rid of that.
seriously, Timmy's a good bloke. If you need anything,
He is a
him
good
and
bloke.
Cole, obviously, Ian, Joe, they're there to help you out. So they're all knife makers, and if we can help, we will. If you've got a problem, if there's anything that's not right, we can't stress this enough. Just pick up the phone and tell us, and let us fix it, because we're not about you being unhappy. So if you're not happy, we'll fix it. Just tell us what the problem is. Thanks.
It's a funny thing. It's a funny thing with that you mentioned that, Corin, because the trend lately, I guess, with online, the internet world, and 24/7, is people always go to social media with a complaint before they contact the supplier or the maker, and it's like, hello, I'm right here. A phone call, an email, a text message, whatever. I'll sort it out for you. You know, it's a funny thing. So remember that if you're disappointed with something, talk to the person that's done the job before you jump online and create a whole lot of hassle and bother.
Don't be Karen. Don't be
Don't be
leaving
Karen.
like Yelp.
Yep.
Yeah, don't be leaving Yelp reviews.
No, be Karen. If you're not happy, just ring the manager and tell me about it. Because for fuck's sake, I can fix anything and we can sort it out. We can get you happy. But I can't do it if you don't tell me. I can't do anything
Righto.
if you don't tell me. That's all I say.
You're forgetting because his face is not on there. We've got our guest Herby. He's still on board.
Go,
His
Herbert.
time, his
I was
time
going
is
to say,
precious.
Cole, keep that up there. From my point of view, all of those steels, I don't know anything about 26C3, and obviously 15 and 20 is, for forging or whatever you're going to do with it. But if you're into stainlesses, those other stainlesses, N690, LMAX, 390, you will not go wrong with that. They'll make tough, absolutely unreal knives. If you're new into the stainless world and you wanted to experiment with something, those three steels there that I know of, Nitro V as well, they'll make tough, shit-hot knives. And just buy a little bit to start with, maybe a metre, and you'll probably make one full-size knives and 600 little knives, which were big knives.
That's what happens.
Yep, but they're all really good, well known in the knife making world, steels for making really good knives. They're not some cheap shit steel.
What's your favourite, mate?
Look,
Rob, what's your favourite steel?
I always say I can
Oh,
get
you
cheap
stole my
steel.
question, you motherfucker.
I don't sell cheap steel, so you can make cheap knives. I sell good steel, so you can make good knives. We get offers from China, we get offers from all around the world to buy cheap steel, and it's like, no, I'm sticking with the big names, the big brands, the major mills. We're dealing direct with the mills. The N690, LMAX, M390, 15 and 20, 1084, all comes direct from the mill. 26C3, the only one that isn't from the mill is Nitro V, which we buy out of NJ Steel Baron, so which is their proprietary product. So there you go. That's what we.
So getting back to the question that was for our guest, not you, Corin.
Okay.
Herbie, what's your favourite steel to use, mate?
I'm in love with S35 VN, as everyone knows. For the application that I use it in, for a hunting knife, the only thing I'd say about any of those powder metallurgy steels is that you need to use a diamond sharpening system to be able to sharpen them correctly. The carbides in them are so damn anti-abrasive that if you try and sharpen those knives on a oil stone or a whetstone, you'll get nowhere fast. But if you use diamonds, you'll bring it back to life pretty quick, and you should be able to maintain that knife out in the field to see you through a whole hunt, no problems at all.
Nice.
If I'm going to make a saltwater series, you'll all cringe at this, 440C.
Yeah,
No, I
fair
won't
enough.
cringe at that.
No,
I will never
no.
cringe. I will never cringe at 440C. Nah,
It's
a great
decent
steel.
steel.
Yeah.
The one
It-
thing with the steel is like there's the flavor of the month.
Yep.
So there's the flavor of the month, and as a kitchen knife maker, if I was to make 1095, and people be shitting on me like, oh, 1095, it's the old steel, like 1095, good heat treated, you can easily reach 63, 64 in working hardness, but it's not the flavor of the month. It's not the 26C3 or German steel like 1.3610 520 some random number still like
That's
you get the flavor of the month.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of, I'll tell you a story actually. I had a guy who was a self-professed knife connoisseur and knew everything about every steel and all the rest of it. And he really wanted me to make him this fantastic knife that was going to do everything. I made it out of 440C and sent it to him, and I didn't tell him what knife steel I'd used, and he said, oh, this is the best knife I've ever had. This just cuts and blah, 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 and I can sharpen it really well. Unreal, will you tell me what steel it is? I said, no, that's my little secret, So for the average user, and I'm not putting anyone down, but the average user between all of those brand new steels, there's really a bee's breath between what's going to perform well and what's not. So
Absolutely, Herbie. I couldn't agree more. I just couldn't agree more. The
and in
amount
the
of
back
effort we
end-
go to for it.
in the back end as a maker, the reliability of that steel really does count on how the maker treats the steel, especially when it comes to heat treatment. Because if you're doing the wrong application for a steel, it's not going to work to the best of its ability.
no,
So you see a lot of people and they jump and they jump and they jump and they're little sparrows, they jump from this one to this one to this one to this one and then never stand still long enough to actually work out how to use a steel properly. And you're like, just work on something and pick a steel, work with it for a while and to understand, the time that it takes to actually get in and become good or familiar with the steel and get repeatable results. Then look at another steel and then work on that one as well. There's so many people that chop and change, and you see them online, and from one week to the next, they're using, high-end stainless, then they'll go back to carbon steels, and then they'll go to, instead of 1084, they'll want to use 80 CRV2 and all the rest of it.
They
do
do
it
it
from
from
our
our
Slow
shop.
down.
They do it from our shop. They'll buy heaps of different stuff, and it's like, I wouldn't do that. I would get a sheet of 52-100 or pick a steel that worked for you, like a stainless or a carbon or whatever. And as you say, Kev, get to know that steel, and then
So I
use
a lot of 1075 and 1084 predominantly because when I run my classes with the forging side of it, they're a really nice steel for a beginner to use. But I actually had a chat, there's a lot of master smiths around, especially in the US, and they still happily use 1075, 1080, 1084 for their standard carbon steel knives, and there's nothing wrong with that steel. You see a master smith making a knife with a steel, it's got to have some sort of value. And I had a talk to Sean McIntyre one time at a guild show, and it was, I did pretty well on all my guild show sales. And I was saying to Sean, look, I'm really happy with using this steel, but, I get a heap of people come past and they say, oh, what steel are your knives? And you say, oh, they're 1075. And they stick their nose in the air and walk off. And I said, so what do I do? And he said, oh, maybe try something like 80 CRV2 And I was like, oh, yeah, why is that? And he goes, because 80 CRV2 sounds cool, doesn't it? And you're like, oh, yeah, I suppose. And it's, 1084 on steroids, effectively. But, he's even one that uses, you watch what Sean does.
1075, mate.
1075. It's about the application.
Herbie,
Finish it.
you missed a chance with that 440C knife. You should have said it's a drop pair steel.
Yes.
Drop pair steel designed in Australia. Drop pair steel.
Look, I think that to cut through all of the bullshit and bravado that goes on, it doesn't matter what pair of shoes you put on. You got to learn how to walk in them. And a lot of people are trying to, that I see as new makers, are trying to run before they can walk. And it's a thing that we're all being guilty of a little bit. But you need to learn, and here I am saying this, and I don't mean to be critical and come over the top a bit, but you need to learn how to do plunges correctly. If you can't do a pretty plunge line and make it even, no point moving into doing a top wedge and a plunge and an integral all-in-one knife. That's the basic things. Get your hand sanding down pat. Get your edge geometry down pat. Put calipers on them and actually measure it and see where you've got all your pressure waves through it. Good edge geometry, exactly, Barry. Edge geometry and heat treatment will outperform anything else, where your handle sits. Too many people try to do too much in one knife to start with, I think, and then they become disenchanted because the knife doesn't work.
And not only that, how like a simple knife can look just totally amazing. It doesn't need to have bling to be an amazing knife. A well-designed, well-proportioned, simple knife can win a knife comp at a show every time and beat stuff with all the bling and engraving.
The thing that a really established maker told me was that your picture of a knife, when someone sees it, you want them in their mind to want to pick it up.
Correct.
If you have done that, you're over the line. If they just flick past you, whether it's at a show or whether it's online, if they can't see themselves using your knife, your design is wrong. So I try to make my knives, apart from the fact that I use all my knives, but I try to make them also a little bit sexy, so that my lines are good, that my handle proportion. A lot of new makers make the handles way too short. So you should be aiming for a 4.5-inch handle on most knives, at least. People buy a piece of knife steel and they always try to make the biggest goddamn blade they can out of it, and they end up with a 3-inch handle. Then they say, it's only a 3-finger user with an 8-inch blade. So, and you see everyone pick up a knife that knows nothing about knives and puts their finger where the guard is and say, it's well balanced because look, it bounces on my finger here. Every knife has a different capability and a different reason as to why they might be forward weighted or why they might be heel weighted. And they're the sort of things that when you start making knives for performance, you understand it a little bit better. So there are the things that I think are well and truly worth. If you go to a guild show, you can go down there and talk to, or a knife show anywhere, you can go and talk to a whole lot of people and makers and meet people that actually not just make a lot of knives, but make knives and sell knives. And they sell knives for a reason. It's because their knives are working.
And you can, at a show, you can see, and I'm not saying you should waste makers' time at a show, by the way, but I am saying at a show, particularly on a Sunday afternoon, you can walk around and you can pick up, feel, handle, and see for yourself the difference in quality between different makers and the difference in price and how that all works, because there is a market. There is a market for lower quality knives, because the price is cheaper. So, but it's just the trade-off. And that the low price doesn't necessarily mean low quality. It just could be a lot simpler design.
So it's called ticket shock. And I think when people are new into making or buying knives, if Mert, what's a 8 or 10-inch kitchen knife worth for you?
Oh, it depends on the steel, man. It depends on the steel, and
am I going to be paying $200?
No, definitely not. lot more than that.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
What's
That
your starting
people-
price, Mert? What's your starting price?
Look, if I'm doing Hunter Valley Blades, my second brand, Hunter Valley Blades, starts at $700
There
Australian.
you go.
And your Mert Tansu branded stuff?
That's starts at 1,100-1,200.
There you
Yep.
go.
But the one is machine finished, the other one is hand finished, and
Yeah,
always has,
we know the difference. We
Yeah,
know the difference. The point though is that the ticket shop. Looking at the go for it, Rob. Keep going.
So that's what I'm saying. That when you're buying a knife from Mert, you're not just buying a knife from a guy who's in the backyard, doesn't know much about it. There's actual science, and there's a lot more depth of understanding of what the outcome of what that tool's going to do on the table. So people might glance over 5 different tables and say, why is Mert's knife $1,200 when I can buy one down here for $200? Go and talk to the maker and you'll probably find out that, oh, okay, so you're doing whatever it is, micro bells, I don't know, triple dunking it in goose fat, I don't know, whatever it is, but you'll soon work out who's actually who in the zoo. So, people, my cheapest knife's the Helium at 185, and then from there we step up to 405 for a cold front, and 435 for the Keter, and the Southwind 450 for a timber handled small hunter, and 465 for a large hunter. I try to keep my prices at a point where average Joe can buy them, but at the same time, I'm not selling to the guy who's only going to buy a Chinese spiker knife.
No, of course.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
So,
And those prices are extremely reasonable. I just recently saw you do a batch run of folders, and I thought, bloody hell, I don't even know how you're making them for that.
yeah, I think I'm lucky enough to have contacts in every part of the knife build, I guess. From I'm really good mates with the people over at Niagara, specialty metals, so I get a fairly good price there. But I also buy, I might be spending 15 grand Australian an order,
Yep.
Yeah, not chump change.
That's what you got to do.
every
What you got to do.
month and a half, So, when you're doing business at that level, you get to meet a whole lot of different people. It opens another section of doors, I guess. So I'm able to get stuff, pre-machined. I don't have a CNC. I don't even dare say that I understand CNC. I can run one very basically and probably crash and break 300 tools doing it. But, where we are situated at the moment, where we've exceeded the council regulation in as far as roof space. So I can't actually put on another workshop to put in a CNC. But I've got to that stage where I understand that productivity and your capability and capacity are 2 different things. And when you need to make knives to make money, you can't be doing them 1 knife a week. So, yeah.
Yeah, look, it's it is what it is, mate. There are people out there that make a living, like Rodrigo Sofredo. He makes a comfortable living out of making a few knives a year, but it's not all of us that can sell a knife for $28,000. So yeah.
No. I think the other important thing to remember is to always invest in your business. Don't invest in toys like surf skis and whatever else. If you're really serious about your business, no matter what it is. So you might have. I've just dropped some coin on a fiber laser. So
Yeah, awesome.
It's going to do pretty much one little job, but it's going to improve what I already do. But at the end of the day, I own that laser. So I've saved up for it. I've put my money aside. So my business, I can walk away from my business tomorrow and owe nothing to anyone.
That's what it's all about.
Own all the tools, So I think little steps at a time. If you need a new grinder and you can't afford what's 84's top of the range grinder called?
No, Gibson
the Gibson
72 is the top of the
72.
range. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's that? 6.5, 7 grand, something like that.
$6,000. Yeah.
Yep. So if you can't afford that, it doesn't matter. go backwards a few steps, and you might be able to afford the is it the 48, the Shopmate?
Yeah. And
Shopmate,
you're not going to make better knives. The Shopmates is so fucking capable. It's an extremely capable grinder, and you're not going to make a better knife because you've got a better grinder. And it's newsflash.
Mate, I've got
You know?
I've got 2 of the Shopmate 48s and a Radius Master.
Yep.
And I don't struggle on any part of my work, mostly because I don't do big hollow grinds.
Yep.
If I wanted to do hollow grinds, I'd have to step up to the 60-inch belt on my current machine, but I would still adapt and do it. You don't need, like you're saying, you don't need to have the best machinery to do the best job. As Rob was saying before, I've seen some tidy knives come through from people that have come to do courses with me, and they're like, "Oh, I've made this," and you have a look at it. You go, "What are you using to make this?" And they go, "Oh, file. I made one of those file jigs that you see online."
Yeah.
And they're, like Rob was saying before, their plunge lines are neat. You know, for what the tools that they're working with, the basic tools, they're doing a fantastic job, because I've seen worse quality from the guys that have the $7,000 machines.
Yep.
They've got all the gear, but they
Absolutely.
haven't invested in the time to actually use it properly or have the skills to use it properly.
And it's very hard to fuck up plunge lines on a file, but it's very easy to do it on a grinder.
Oh, yeah.
So I think
Many a moment like that.
all of that aside, I guess that's kind of me. Then R&M Blades. I guess Naomi, my wife, is an absolute legend.
Yes, you've got good support there, mate.
She's taken over more than the lion's share of the business. So we get about, and this is going back to becoming a full-time maker. You see that I'm quite busy on social media because you have to be, because I'm overshop front. It's all those sort of things. And the more you make, the more you got to do on social media. And we get about 64 inquiries a day, every day, that needs to get handled. And I was starting to not handle them that well.
Understandably so, mate.
I know that feeling well, mate. I'm not in customer service anymore for that very reason. I think I sent you guys some responses to my, no, I don't do it. I get other people to do it now.
So, Robert, what's your recommendation for a young or any knife maker who have the delusions or dreams of becoming a full-time knife maker? What would you recommend them? So let's say I'm a part-time maker and I'm thinking I'm gonna be rich. I want to start making knives for a living. What do you recommend them?
Put your COVID mask on and go to a bank. Seriously, I would take some leave from work, even for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and go and see if you can get out of bed every morning. Make sure you start work at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Give yourself half an hour for lunch. Finish again at 4, and do that day in, day out.
4.
And then try and finish.
That.
Yeah, I know. Look, I do.
Yeah.
Most of those, but then try and sell your product.
Yeah. Then throw in the social media, the marketing, the ordering, the customer service, the administrative tasks like your tax and accounts keeping and all the rest of it. And Mert and I now look, just both of us sitting here going, what the hell are we? I mean, Rob, I remember back, it was a while ago now, obviously.
It sounded like a good idea, okay? It sounded like a good idea when I did.
Rob, I remember a quick conversation that we had because I was a full-time maker, and you got in touch with me and said, look, I want to have a talk to you about being a full-time maker.
Yep.
And like, I think my advice at the time was, like, I'm doing it when I took over and left my job and stuff, I had some serious health issues go on. And I was like, well, I'm not actually doing it to, conquer anything, doing it for a different reason. But even at the level that I'm doing it, it's a lot of work. When you started to develop your brand and continue, like, just watching your growth was like, man, that is like next level. And like I said, you can't do it. I couldn't imagine doing it without the support that I get, which is, I don't have the hands-on support from my family. I have that moral support, which is good. But at the level that you're at, man, I'm stunned a lot of the time that you don't have full-time staff. I don't think people understand that. You don't have full-time staff there churning this stuff out for you. You've got a couple of dedicated mates that seem to give you a hand when it's really needed. You've got your wife there that's, like I said, going above and beyond at that business level. But it's that sort of stuff. And I think then the reality sets in that you go, beauty, I'd love to put someone on full-time. And then the reality check is sometimes the paycheck doesn't cover those needs.
No, totally. I've been lucky enough that I don't know if you guys remember Jamie Harrington. Jamie went to one show, got best hunter and best whatever else. And when I saw his work, that was years ago, like 5 or 6 years ago, I was like, holy shit, where's this guy been hanging out, you know? And as luck, fate, whatever you want to say, he ended up moving up my way, and he's only half an hour away. So Jamie's had 3 weeks or 4 weeks where he can come to the workshop and give me 1 day on his day off, whatever it is, and he just comes along and hangs out in the shed. So and works bloody hard. And to have a guy that actually can run any of the tools in the shop pretty much, I can trust him not to cut his hands off, you know, because everything in a knife shop wants to eat steel, and a human hand is nothing like a piece of steel. And the guy that I guess he can run a critical eye over what I'm doing. But the one thing that it did highlight for me is how much I don't actually speak to people. So being a full-time maker is actually quite lonely as well. Like if I'm grinding 50 knives, I might grind 50 knives just before lunch. So I start early. I put my headset on and I'm grinding flat out. Making knives is extremely mentally tiring because even though you might be doing muscle memory or whatever else, you're actually following and, you know, like fouls in lines and how your grind's going. So when Jamie came on board, I actually realised how much I don't talk to people and have people in the shop. So you can become quite a hermit doing it. Yeah.
Oh, very much so, mate. Absolutely. It's funny, like Mert and I, same boat as you, full-time makers, and just every now and then just that, and probably the same thing, I guess, with you and me, mate, is just that Instagram message or that text message or something just saying, you know, just checking in, how's it all going, mate? And, you know, you have, even then, because you know what everyone else is up to and you know what you're doing, you're like, oh, yeah, I'll give them a quick response because I don't want to take up too much of that other person's time. But I'm the same, man. You realise, like, with this lockdown, with this COVID stuff and all the changes going with that, I only notice it when I leave the house, when I leave my workshop. I work from home. I'm by myself. It's like, you know, knife makers are the social distance kings of the world. We don't go out and we don't see people. We don't explore.
How much of your life changed, Kev? Like you realize how long you are. When people complain about COVID, you realize, shit, my stuff never changed. I'm saying
only when I go to the post office
as usual.
When I go to the post office, and there's more and more barriers up in it, and people looking at you weird because you're sort of walking in, looking at people like, what are you staring at me for? You know, like, you know, I'm not diseased, and you go, oh, that's right, they think that I am diseased, but no, work-wise, nothing has changed except for the teaching side. But in a day-to-day, we're absorbed. We're like head down, bum up, doing our work. And you're right, we don't talk to a lot of people. It's a funny thing.
I went to a post office, and I talk to them all the time. It's Margaret and John. And I went to the post office, like, it's been a long time. We haven't seen you. How you been? I said, good. How are you?
and Matt, thanks Matt for the message on here from Matt Snape. The other thing that people don't realise, though, is when I'm in my workshop, like Rob was saying, I'm in my workshop, everything in that workshop wants to eat metal. So my phone is on silent, away from me, and I don't answer the phone, and I might be working on a task for 8 hours. But I do appreciate when people ring and leave a voice message It just says, just checking in on you, mate.
Yeah.
So if I answered the phone every time it rang, I'll give up. I wouldn't be a knife maker because and same with Herby, 60 odd inquiries a day. Holy crap,
Yeah,
get
you
out of
can't.
town.
Yeah.
I get about 6 a day if I'm lucky, and that's enough for me. Does my head in.
Well,
I think
Yeah.
people don't that are outside of being a knife maker is how long it actually takes to make a good knife.
Takes a year.
15 years.
Yeah, I've seen your barrel knife. A year in the making. The longest gestation period I've ever seen of any animal. So when someone says, "Hey, can I order a knife?" and you say, "Yep, no dramas," and then a week later they message you and say, "How's my knife going?"
Yeah. You should
Are we
see
there yet?
people. I've got
Are we
people
there
that
yet?
have asked me for barrel knives for like 4 consecutive years. And I'm like, probably never going to make one for them, but they can keep asking. It's okay.
I give people my realistic time frame for people for a knife pre-sore back, which is slowing me down a little bit at the moment, but I'm sure I'll get through that again, is like 6 weeks.
Yep.
If you ring up and you want a knife next week, if I've got one in stock you want to buy, sure. If you want a knife made to specs, 6 weeks. Easy, minimum 6 weeks. It's just how it goes.
Guys, you feel like I'm going off tangent, but just wanna put it out there. I every now and then I log on my Facebook, and I don't use social media. When I say I don't use social media, I use my Instagram for my business. And the only reason I have my social media and Facebook available is half of our family lives on the other side of the world, and the other is living on the other side of the world. Only reason I'm keeping a Facebook account open is so the grandparents get to see the kids. I turned off all of my notifications. So if I ever see a notification on my business page, and I then go on notifications, and it takes me probably a month to see a friend request or somebody commenting on my personal stuff. Please don't take it personal. If I haven't replied, if I haven't added you as a friend, not that because I'm an antisocial asshole, I don't go on the Facebook to check my notifications and all that. Okay, just want to put it out there while we were talking about it.
Get it?
So the other thing, Rob, which we've got to give acknowledgement to you as well, and we see it on your social media, and it's not you blowing wind up your own coit and all the rest of it, is you still with all of the work that you're doing and all the knives that you're producing, and the small amount of free time that you've got for yourself, you are always contributing to local organisations and stuff, particularly with like the Deer Hunters Association, getting young hunters involved and all the rest of it. Just sort of want to put it out to people there that that's something that you're also doing with regards to helping out those other community areas.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I've done, I guess, a little bit of motivational speaking for PTSD and depression, anxiety, and men's mental health. I've been asked to do that as a survivor and as a recoverer of PTSD, and to talk about my experiences on that road. I think that the one thing that PTSD has taught me is how low you can actually go in life, which means when you see, your feet hit the carpet every morning and you're actually happy with the fact that you're on the right side of the grass, it's a good day. So it excites me to be able to give someone that's a follower, someone that is struggling, someone that just, might sit with their mate and watch something or something, that I've said. It excites me to know that they're having a better day because they know that someone out there has actually gone through what they are going through, and that's not an unreal expectation that you will survive and survive today to live tomorrow, So I'm more than happy to give time, effort, giveaways, donate knives, whatever I can do to try and raise the awareness around men's mental health and the fact that, too many blokes kill themselves every single day. Never mind COVID. just talk about suicide, because of how they're feeling about their life and how they're feeling about where they're at on the planet. So it's a good life we have. It's not a long life we have. So, do what I say is grab some anchor men around you, and anchor men are, 5 of your best mates. And if you're feeling that down that you're going to end it, give the first bloke a call. If he doesn't answer, the second bloke, third bloke, fourth bloke, fifth bloke, someone in that anchor group will answer. And by the time you've rung the fifth one, you would have forgotten about what you were doing anyway. So, Anyway, won't go too far down that.
Sage advice, mate. No, you
have to, mate, because you're not the only one. You're not the only one, Rob. Like we've had Dino on from Dean Hamilton, and
what a
same deal, mate. Yeah, exactly. And you're not these yourself, Dean, and all the guys that I know that are listening even tonight that are going through the same thing. You're not alone. So don't be afraid to speak out. This is what this forum is for.
It shouldn't be a taboo. It shouldn't be a taboo subject that we talk about behind closed doors. Obviously, you don't want to go. You don't want to be sort of, chanting out in the streets about it potentially, but you want to have that, like I said, that confidential network or that really close network of people that you can trust to be able to communicate with it. And like I said, Rob, fuck the COVID death rates, man. We're losing stacks more people every year through, and not getting into the male-female thing, but young men in particular, we lose so many lives, young men's lives through suicide because they don't think that they've got any avenues to talk about their situation, or they think it's, weak or whatever the whole thing is, because there's a stigma out there about talking about this sort of stuff. And it's people like yourself and Dean and me to a degree, and others that have battled, personal demons. Stand up, mate, stick your chest up in the air, flex your guns, and tell people, fuck, look, there's nothing fucking non-manly about it.
I lost my father-in-law to it, and if I wouldn't have if he picked up the phone. If he just picked up the phone, he was one of my best mates. Why wouldn't you just, So you're right.
Make sure, like I said, with that group of 5, make sure with that group of 5 that you've got 5 blokes that you can trust, and pick up the phone or.
And I think that's where knife making, and when I've taken, myself through this same journey, but knife making for me means that I can achieve something. So when you're feeling useless and you're feeling like you can't do anything right, the fact that you can go out to the workshop and only set small things like, I'm going to drill some holes in the handle today. The fact that you actually went out to the workshop and drilled those holes means you've achieved something. And the next day you might be able to glue that handle on. And at the end of the week, you'll feel like you're on top of the world because you've actually done something, you've achieved it, and, away you go. So that's where I find that knife making, you can actually not only just produce something, but you can use it at the end of the day as well. And that's a really good feeling for most people.
And I like the fact that what I'm making as a knife maker is going to outlast me. I like to think. I don't think anything I make is going to get left in a paddock, but most of it's going to outlast me. So it's like leaving a little bit of your legacy. That's a bit more than just a memory as well. I like that part of it. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
So
very good.
Speaking of suicide, if a friend of mine's son trying to commit suicide, so that kind of fucking caught me off guard and surprised me. He's 16.
16,
Yep.
Yeah. And
rough. Too many good people.
Especially if you've got kids at the moment that are in the higher end of school at the moment, year 10, 11, 12, keep in touch with them. Make sure they're doing okay, because there's a lot of changes in this last year. Get them involved in something that they can, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be knife making, but get them involved in something that they can feel like they're getting a bit of, return from it, because, all these poor kids that are some of them aren't even going to get their HSCs done. Some of them aren't going to get, end results on stuff they've been sort of putting themselves forward for the last 10 years or more through schooling. They're not going to get to graduate with their mates or go on their, formals and all the rest of it. So those young fellas, like Mert was just saying, 16-year-olds, they've got, they sit back as nearly 50-year-old and go, they got no fucking pressure at all these days. But it's a different pressure, and they've got different expectations, and you can't minimise the impact that they're feeling because it's not the same impact on us. So, if you've got kids, especially the kids in that sort of age groups at the moment, keep an eye on them. Make sure that they're, make sure you're talking to them. Make sure that they're, know that they can come out and have a chat too, because they're all going through a hard time right now.
Yeah. So, absolutely,
We've lost Mert temporarily.
It's probably gone flat. That's normally about
So
that
after
time
this
of night.
COVID stuff's all over, I'll open back up, and I'm not advertising. I don't need any more work. It's not me self-advertising, but I am going to open back up to do a few short courses for people. More so from the fact of the joy that I get seeing people come along, learn, and take a knife home with them. I'm sure that you guys that do exactly the same thing and teach courses in your own, it's a pretty cool thing that you've been able to pass on to someone else. It's like teach a man to fish, right? So
I wouldn't. I'll tell you right now. I wouldn't do it if I didn't get that thrill out of it. And having a laugh like Matty Snape that's on here, Matt Snape. He's one of the last guys that I had down here doing a course because of the restrictions and stuff. But we had that same conversation. My thrill in doing it is, I feel like I'm competent enough to teach and, have the personality to draw people in. But it's watching these guys come in or guys and girls, ladies, young and old, come in and taking that little part of, what I'm showing them and the pride they walk out with at the end of the day. That's that rush that you can't get, really.
Yeah. So before we knock off, I've got to tell you, Rob, in front of everybody, in front of the crowd, that one thing that really shits me about your success, mate, is that we haven't caught up at a knife show other than on the other side of the world since for about 4 years. So I'd love to see you get to some more knife shows when your world settles down a bit, because I'd love to sit down and have a chat and catch up properly and face to face. So that's where most of the face to face stuff happens for me. So
I'd really
look forward to that.
I'd like to get to the Sydney show, and I know that I won't have enough stock in the next foreseeable whatever to have a table, but I'd like to go and maybe have a booth where young makers can come to the booth and bring their knife and have a similar experience that I had with Peter D'Also.
So what we do, this is no bullshit. What we're going to do, we're going to nominate you to man the guild table at the show, which means we'll fly you up. You can volunteer to run that table, and do that all weekend. And by the way, you can stay wherever I'm staying. We'll sort it out.
Oh, goodness me! Hopefully, top and toe.
Hey, Herby, between you and me, you might want to get your own room.
I know he's a mess when he's drunk. So,
oh, fair dinkum. I'm not the mess.
No,
Where's Mert gone?
Oh. I've shared a room with Mert on many occasions at knife shows, and I can't comment that he's as messy as I am, or vice versa. It's an awesome thing, mate. Look, your success in this comes from nothing else but an infinite amount of hard work and sacrifice that I don't think a lot of people are really, really aware of what really goes into a day in the life of Robert Herbert running R&N Blades, and your family as well.
Thanks, mate.
So yeah, hats off to you, mate. It's fantastic to see an Aussie stepping up to the occasion.
Well, it's just putting us on the international stage and being able to running those circles where you've got people now turning their head to Australia. For me, that's what my next level is. I guess if you look at, I'm not attending local guild shows, but what I'm doing internationally is making people look this way. as to what Australia has to offer. So,
Look, man, I got to say, I'm looking forward to the next time that we catch up overseas, because it means life will be back a little bit more normal.
yeah, absolutely.
And everyone else that we get to catch up with.
Close out on
mate.
my advice, I guess, for anyone that's new to knife making: get yourself a grinder of some sort. Buy a strip of steel. It's cheap, high carbon to learn how to grind. Anyone can heat treat that for you. Make sure when you buy your belts, buy at least 5 of each of a 60 grit, 120, 240, 400. If you can afford a variable speed, that will be unreal. If you can't, don't worry about it. And buy yourself a pack of Rhino Wet that starts at 80 grit, 120, 240, 400. And yeah, just have fun,
That's it, mate. Have fun.
Don't take it too seriously. Don't take yourself seriously. And put your work out there for people that aren't going to pat you on the back and say you're doing well, and then behind closed door goes, that's the biggest piece of shit.
That's so critical. That's critical.
Get your work to people that you trust. Message someone that.
Yeah, you got to find the people that are going to give you the real truth. And people come to me and say, "Oh, can I get some feedback on this?" And I can tell pretty quickly after I give them feedback whether they wanted feedback or whether they wanted recognition.
Yep, absolutely.
You put your big boy pants on and ask Sean McIntyre to give you feedback,
or Peter Del Rasso. Fucking Jesus Christ!
Yeah,
that guy.
If those guys come over and don't pick out a dozen faults on your knives, you're doing all right.
and you know what? They're great guys. They're not there just to find fault. But if you ask them genuinely, I want to improve. Find my faults. They'll find stuff you never even knew you were doing wrong, and they'll help you fix it. And they're not just there to take the schmicky out of your work. They'll give you all the tips you need. Look, what you do, you've got to grind the edge off a file to get into there and fix this up, and they'll tell you how to do it. And that's the sort of thing we need to do for people coming up. As as I guess we get better, we need to give that same hand up that those guys have been doing for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever. He's not that old, but yeah.
And turn to the guys that have been around for a long time. Like Barry Gardner's always been a big inspiration for me to look where he's gone to. And, the people that he's had, course through his shop. You look at those sort of guys. I think people that have been around for long enough that they're not just overnighters. I know that skin and bone knives, I don't even know if that is still going on or whether we'll...
that's Dean. Yeah, Dean's still doing skin and bone.
Yeah, but I didn't know whether Dean was still running skin and bone or whether he was just doing
Skin and Bones is his knife brand, and the Forged Through is his courses. So
yeah. Well, that's okay. Yeah. Well, they're the sort of, for me, when I was looking at, I think it was Rifle Bird knives?
Oh, that's Warwick Edmonds, great guy. Yeah.
They were for me guys that really, I looked at their knives and thought, geez, I'd just like to own one of their knives. There's some guys. Scott Broad. Oh,
yeah.
He's probably Flinders Knives, I think his brand is.
Yeah, Flinders Rangers Knives.
He's probably one of the most understated makers that I've ever seen. Scott Broad can turn out a damn good blade. I can tell you that for free.
And he's a train driver. How good's that? And he's a train driver.
Not just the little set,
not the toy trains.
The lounge room. But Scott's got the issue of it being 42 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning when he lives or whatever. So, but all of that aside, there's so many, so many damn good makers in Australia that are just running under the radar a little bit. You just go digging for them, have a look for them, and away you go.
Yeah, awesome.
What's his name? Zach?
Zach Chong.
Oh, Zach Chong.
To me, he was one of the first guys that really turned a light on in my head around doing, this is going way back, when he made his first run of folders, I think it was. He made 10 folders. And I thought, wow, you know, here's a guy that's actually doing a production run, be it 10 folders. Geez, imagine getting to the point where you can do 10 folders, you know. And Zach's eye for detail was something that was pretty cool as well. Here we go.
Yeah, Corin's got one of Zach's engraved by Danae, I think it was. Is that engraved by Danae or?
Yeah, that's a Zach Chong engraved by Danae.
Yeah. Fantastic. You know, Zach could probably work as a designer for any one of the big companies, you know. And talking about that, and I really apologise for you if you're listening and I've forgotten your name. It's not that I've forgotten your name, my brain's broken. But Spyderco, what's his
Alistair Phillips.
Alistair is just an absolute gentleman. Like, you couldn't get a nicer guy in the world to talk to. I don't think he's got a bad bone in his body. You know?
I've spent a bit of time with him. No, just kidding.
But there's a guy that wheels out everything in his shop garage to use his tools and then puts them all back in, you know, when he packs up and he's doing designs for Spyderco, you know, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So there are some fantastic people. You get out there. I won't mention Jack's name because Jack, I don't think, rates that level of love.
Yeah, there's that, mate. They're very we don't forget, and I've got one there as well. I can go and get one, but we're not going to go there. We don't give him that. We don't give him any time on this show, mate. None at all.
But my point is that you can quickly work out who is a maker and who's a faker. So
yeah, mate, that's it.
There you go. That's Uncle Herbie's 20 hours of advice.
Mate, we really appreciate the time for you to come on here and you know, share it with us. We know that you're under the pump. You've got a lot of priorities that probably outweigh our hack bloody show here, but you know, there's a lot of positive comments coming in, mate. You know, thanking you for your time on here tonight as well. We appreciate it. I think everyone else does. It's one of our. It'll go back up on the top of the list as one of our better shows because normally we're unprofessional, untechnical sort of hacks at this stuff. But you know, this has been a really good evening, mate. We've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Hey, are you still involved in the hunting podcast?
Yeah, so I'm a host on Hunting Camp Down Under. So just getting hunting camp stories from everyday Australians and putting them, you know, out there. Just
So let's get a full rundown just before we go of all your social media channels and what they're called and what you want to shout out, Rob. Give us a go. We get about 1,000 listens an episode, so yeah, get it out there.
Okay, so I'm a director for Kafaru Australia. So Kafaru Australia is pretty new, and we do outdoor gear pretty much. So backpacks and all those sort of things. Just
top quality gear.
Yep. I'm a host on Hunting Camp Down Under, which is you can search it anywhere, and it's just got a whole bunch of different stories about Aussie hunters, boys and girls, who have had some fantastic hunts experiences and that sort of stuff. What else do you want to? I'm pretty, I guess.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook channels. They're just Robert Herbert, isn't it?
Herbert. That's all I was going to say there. Yeah, so check me out there if you want to. And if you say, "Hey man, can I grab a knife?" we're kind of seriously booked out to Christmas plus, and you know, we're spinning out 2,000 knives a year, financial years. So
bit of patience involved, everyone.
Yeah, please.
Understand.
But give him your support all the same. Right? Jump in and give him your support. He's doing great things, great designs, and jump in, give him your support.
And
get on the waiting list.
Always ask.
I think I should be on the waiting list now, Rob.
You are. I've got your message.
Good. All right. Nice.
Thank you.
Right. Jump in, guys.
No worries, mate. Good on you. Thanks very much.
All right. See you guys.
Take care.
Have a good night, sir.
See you, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Well, that was bloody good.